Hi, I'm Fran Batzer. You can find me on Facebook at FB Health Coach. I am also training to be a vegan fusion culinary teacher through Mark Reinfeld. What I'm going to show you today is the most amazing, tasty brown mushroom gravy. There is no oil, there is no salt, other than a little bit in the bouillon. So I have shiitake mushrooms that I've already sliced and have started a water saute with. And so now I'm going to show you how I do the slicing on the shiitakes. They are more of a medicinal mushroom. They're more meaty than a cremini. They come in a variety of sizes, from the tiny ones. What I do is I just cut a bit of their stem off, depending on how fresh they are and how dried out that tip of the stem. When it gets older, they get dried out and chewy. They're tough. So then I'm just going to slice through thinly the shiitake. And so I've water sauteed these. I'm going to add those to what I have water sauteed. And then I'm going to also do a dice on an onion. So I'm cutting off the top of the onion, the root end of the onion, and then slicing with the onion flat on the cutting board, slicing down through so it's stable. And then I'm just going to pull away their skin. So my onion is stable. I'm going to do a dice. So I'm going to cut about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch slices, and then cut in the opposite direction. And I'm being careful to keep my fingers out of the way. At the same time I'm slicing down, I'm holding these slices together tightly with my fingers. Also minding that my fingers are not anywhere near the blade. And then I'm going to fold this wobbly end over and continue dicing through. Do the other half a little bit faster. So the onion I'm going to use to caramelize in with the mushrooms. These will add more moisture and bring out more sugars, just creating more flavor for the mushrooms. So this is my, it's really important with both the shiitakes and with the onion. The sharper your knife is, the less likely you're going to get cut. So I'm going to pick up my Pampered Chef flexible cutting mat, which makes it very handy to move ingredients from one spot to the other. I'm going to turn my flame back up to medium. I had it on simmer because they were starting to dry out. So the onion will add moisture back to the mushrooms. So I'm going to give them a minute just for the moisture of the onion to loosen up the mushrooms. If I was to rake through the bottom of them now, because of the sugars that have come out, which I've water sauteed the mushrooms to get those to come out. If I rake through it too fast, it would tear up the mushrooms. So I'm just going to allow the moisture of the onions to loosen up the mushrooms, and then get a bit of a saute to tenderize and caramelize the onion. So you can really see underneath here, to be careful when you're cooking the mushrooms that this does not turn black. You just want it in a nice caramel color. And that just imparts so much flavor to your recipe. And it's not an ingredient you can add from a bottle. So as these saute, I want to brown my dry ingredients. So I'm going to take you over to this pan. This is the 10-inch Pampered Chef stainless steel skillet. And I'm going to get that heated, but I've got my ingredients on this side of the stove. Let me bring those over. So I've got nutritional yeast, oat flour, chickpea flour, bouillon. I'm going to leave those there. And some organic no salt seasoning from Kirkland. Funny thing that Costco doesn't sell it anymore, but you can get it on Amazon. So now they're starting to stick again. I can feel them kind of drag across the bottom, so it's time to turn the burner down and slow down the cooking process. So on this side, I've got my burner on high, and I'm going to add my nutritional yeast. This is an organic nutritional yeast. It is full of B vitamins. It's an important source of protein for vegans. Chickpea flour, a gluten-free flour, also another protein source. And then oat flour, which I've just taken old-fashioned oats and ran them in my Blendtec high-speed blender and broke those into a flour. So I'm going to allow those to toast a bit, and the toasting just brings out more flavor, just like it does with onions and the mushrooms. So it takes a little bit of the rawness away from the flour. So we've got that on high, and you want to watch this because it can very quickly get away from you and end up in the trash instead of in your dessert or in your gravy. So let's go back to the mushrooms and do a toss on those. Now that the heat's down, they're starting to release. I just need to get the onion underneath the mushroom. So in the next step, to create the gravy part, I'm going to take the bouillon and the water and mix this bouillon in. So this is a really highly concentrated vegetable base that's organic. I'm going to take 1 tablespoon. I'm going to add that to the mushrooms. If I added it to the water, it's harder to get it to dissipate because it's so sticky and thick. So I'm going to get all of that out of there. That is where a huge part of the flavor punch comes from in this recipe. In addition to the Worcestershire sauce, this is an organic vegan version by Annie's. I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of this, and it's another super concentrated flavor punch for the gravy. Get the spoon out of there. Uh-oh, let's go back over. See what's happening on the edges of the flours? It's starting to turn brown, so I want to give that a toss. And another 30 seconds, that would have been burnt. So it's really good, especially on that high of a heat. So I'm going to turn my heat off, and that will have some carryover toasting time, but it's a little bit safer. I'll come back to the mushrooms. Give them a toss and get those ingredients all coated onto the mushrooms and the onion. Another optional things that you can add into this, which I'm just going to pull out of my cabinet, is sage and thyme. So I'm going to carefully measure this. There's a tablespoon of sage and a tablespoon of thyme. Again, carefully measured, but in a half tablespoon. It's not like baking a cake. You can't overdo it, but better to err on the lower portion than too high and have it overbearing. So here we've got just an amazing flavor base with those mushrooms. Now I'm going to take my flour, I'm going to add that, and then toss the mushrooms with all of my flour, all my dry ingredients. So I'm going to get all of those nicely coated. The advantage to doing it this way is the gravy is less likely to have clumps in it. So I've distributed my flours on the mushrooms and the onion, and I'm just less likely to end up with clumps. So now I'm going to add in, this seasoning has got dehydrated vegetables in it and pepper, so it adds a little bit of a spice to it. Whoop. So toss that around, and then slowly, and I've got this pan on low, you don't want to do this on a high. I'm adding 3 cups of water. And I'm just going to slowly get it distributed amongst the gravy. Now I can turn the burner up to high. And I'm stirring and kind of scraping the bottom at the same time to make sure I don't have any burn spots. So I want to get all my sticky little corners scraped up and incorporated. And I can already feel it kind of seizing up underneath. I'm going to take my spoon and just scrape the flours off the spatula. Add a little bit more water. And again, this is a recipe that you can do a day in advance. It reheats wonderfully. It's just, you know, maximizing your time on that holiday day when all the family's coming. It's a recipe that transports really well for potlucks. This is something that is, of course, amazing on baked potatoes, mashed potatoes. We had it the other night on steamed cauliflower. It was super good. Another thing that you can use this with is putting it with noodles. So like a fettuccine, or a fettuccine, not a fettuccine. What word am I looking for? A stroganoff. And trust me, with the shiitake mushrooms and the texture of those, you're not going to miss your animal products in your stroganoff. This would be just a mushroom stroganoff. You can also add, optionally, almond milk to give it more of a cream base. But this, as simple as these ingredients are, this is so incredibly tasty. So it takes a few minutes for the flours to absorb all the water. And again, I've got it on high, so I want to keep kind of moving it around. And then I like to get onto the edge of the pan with keep the edges clean, because those can burn also. And there's flavor in what's coated on the edge of the pan. So this is practically salt-free, except for that tablespoon of bouillon. It is oil-free, it is sugar-free, but it is packed with flavor. So we'll look forward to doing more videos in the future. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.